For a broader discussion on the 2023 matric results, we're now joined by Biki Lepota, who speaks for Umalusi. Mr. Lepota, a pleasure to have you on the program this evening. The matric exams have been described as credible by Umalusi, but it sounds a bit odd to me when we do hear about these allegations or findings of a group copying. Explain to us some of the concerns that have been raised by the quality assurer.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Good evening to you and good evening to the viewers of your television station. Yes, of course, group copying is one of the concerns that Umalusi raised and continues to raise. But what we have seen this year relative to previous years, the number of detected cases is gone down. If you remember, in 2022, the number was upwards of 1,900 learners who were involved, particularly in the Mpumalanga province. So, but in terms of the group copying cases detected this year, we are saying, and we want to underline that these are still being verified. So what this means is that in the end, the numbers could go down or they could remain the same. So that's one of our concerns. The other of our concerns relates to the quality of printing or poor printing quality of some of the question papers in some of the provinces. And those issues have been reported and discussed with the relevant assessment bodies. So those assessment bodies have been given clear instructions to ensure that going forward, issues of this nature do not recur. Translation is another of our concern because some of the learners in the system receive their education through the medium of Afrikaans. And when the question papers are set, they are set in English. So what happens is that Umalusi quality assures the English version of the question papers. And once the English versions have been approved, the assessment bodies take responsibility for ensuring that the question papers are translated from English into the Afrikaans language to enable those who receive tuition through the medium of Afrikaans to write in the language that they receive tuition. So in this case, we cited an example of geography where a concept was mistranslated in the final version of the Afrikaans question paper. So those are some of the concerns that we have. Of course, we did cite the unfortunate issue of the mathematical literacy, the use of mandatory Palestine in that question paper, but we did applaud the efforts taken by the Department of Basic Education because they've apologized. They may declare that when setting the question papers, the examiners and moderators were unaware of the political connotation of the phrase or the words used.
So going back to the issue around group copying, are there any steps that are going to be taken against the students that are affected? And if so, how does that also affect the release of their results?
In terms of irregularities, when Umalusi says we approve the release of results, there is a condition put in the approval statement, and the condition goes as follows, that we give this assessment body the right to release, or we approve that this assessment body releases the results. But in the case of the learners that are implicated in irregularities, the assessment body concerned must block the results of those learners pending finalization of the cases at hand and verification by Umalusi. So when the results are announced or released on Thursday, Friday, the learners who are part or form part of those that are implicated in group copying will not have their results released until the cases are finalized. So that's how the cases get dealt with. In the case of the learners whose cases have been finalized, because some of the cases have been finalized, but not of those of group copying, cases such as in the other assessment bodies where one or two learners were found in possession of crypt notes during the writing of the examinations, the assessment body did all the necessary investigations and they arrived at the decision that yes, indeed the learner was involved. Their results have been finalized and the learners have been barred from participation in the examination sessions. So that's how we normally deal with the cases. In the case of the ones that we're discussing now, the group copying, we will await the final investigations and final reports from the assessment body concerned, and we will take the matter from there onwards.
Another issue that has come to light in recent days is that of the buying and selling of fake certificates. And I do know that as Umalusi, you have been actively involved in curbing this particular issue. Maybe tell us how.
Okay, thank you for the question. Let me just clarify that the selling and buying of fake matric certificate has got no relationship with what Umalusi is legislatively mandated to do.
Right.
The mandate of Umalusi is to issue authentic certificates to those learners who qualify after having participated in the examination. The issue of selling and buying of fake matric certificate is something that fraudsters out there are involved in. Umalusi did indicate during the State of Readiness media briefing in October last year on the 13th, and we did demonstrate the security features that are associated with all the certificates that we issue. And we continue to advise members of the public as well as employers, both in the public and private sector, to please ensure that they verify their certificates of their employees. And to do that, it's a very easy process. They simply visit the website of Umalusi, and when they are on the website, they simply go to the verification and certificate icon to get access to the list of all those agencies that have signed contracts with Umalusi. And making use of those, employers will be able to know whether the people that they have employed do possess legitimate certificates or not. So we continue to urge members of the public. And finally on this matter, we are saying anyone who is found to be involved in this practice, whether you are a seller or a buyer, we want to warn members of the public that this constitutes a criminal offense and it is punishable by law. As we said earlier today, we are working with all the law enforcement agencies in whatever way possible to ensure that all those involved in this criminal offense are brought to book.
And from the assessment of Umalusi, would you say that this kind of problem is widespread, or have you just noted isolated incidents of the buying and selling of fake certificates?
Well, this issue, as we said, has been reported widely by the media over the last 6 months. But in terms of the magnitude of the case, we only rely on the issues that get reported on in the media. So on that basis, we do not believe that is a widespread issue. But what encourages us is that the police are doing their work as we speak. About 11 people have been arrested, and we did indicate that they will be appearing in different courts of our country during the course of this month. But we continue to warn members of the public that such a practice has got no relationship with what Umalusi is legislatively mandated to do, and we discourage anyone from involving themselves in such practices.
So as the results are expected to be announced on Thursday, there are a few questions that maybe students might have on their minds as to what next steps to take to ensure that they get their hands on their certificates as well. Maybe share some general information on what steps follow after the release of the matric results.
Process-wise, Umalusi has given approval to all the assessment bodies, Department of Basic Education, Department of Education and Training, Independent Examinations Board, and South African Comprehensive Assessment Institute for them to release to the learners the certificates. So what happens is that the minister, in respect of the DBE, will on Thursday make those announcements, and learners are expected to collect their certificates from their schools the next day, which is on a Friday. In respect of the other assessment bodies, the learners should actually contact their schools, and their schools will tell them when the certificates will be available to be received from the schools. As the chairperson of our council did indicate, there will be those learners who, according to the results, did not make it. But as Umalusi, we encourage them to re-register for the next available opportunity to participate in the examinations. And in the case of the NSC, there is a May-June exam, a mid-year exam, which is a second chance a program for learners to improve their results. So that is essentially what will happen from today onwards.
And before I let you go, there were also concerns which were raised by Dr. Rakumetse earlier on, which you also mentioned a short while ago, around the translation quality as an issue in some papers. Could you provide insights into how Umalusi plans to improve the translation quality to avoid such issues in future?
Thank you very much. Umalusi is on record as saying that learners should be given a chance to participate or engage meaningfully with all the questions contained in the question papers for the subjects which they are registered to write examinations. What Umalusi plans to do is something that will have to be discussed in the next quarterly meetings with the relevant assessment bodies to say, because currently we are not involved in the process of translation, what steps can be put in place to ensure that issues of translation or poor translation do not recur in the future. So that's what we will do. But we continue to encourage everybody to make sure that before the question papers get given to the learners to write, all these issues have been looked at, because in any examination system, the responsibility lies with every participant therein to ensure that we eliminate hurdles. We are able to foresee and eliminate hurdles at which learners will fall through no faults of their own. So what normally happens is that feedback meetings are organized at the beginning of every year after the results have been approved to say what lessons did we learn in the previous cycle of examinations and how can we ensure that we put systems in place to avoid recurrence of issues of this nature. So that's what we normally do. We'll continue to do that. And we will have to see as Umalusi, as a quality council, what steps can be taken to ensure that the translated question papers have some form of a verification process put in place before they are printed.
And as we wrap up our conversation, also in light of the irregularities and the challenges that we have discussed in this segment, how does Umalusi then envision shaping the future of matric exams or the matric exam system in the country? And what role does the quality assurer then play for itself to continually improve the quality and reliability of assessments?
There are two things in your question. Number one, in terms of the research world over, it is difficult to police human behavior, because when you are talking acts of dishonesty, we are relying on the behavior of the person who is participating in the examination. And by the person here, I'm talking about two people. First, we are talking about the learner or the examinee, him or herself. In the case of the DBE, we know that there is a system of pledges in place which learners have signed together with their parents to say we pledge to ensure that we do not involve ourselves in issues of malpractices. So that is what we are seeing happening. And we believe that it's actually working, because if you look at where we were last year and where we are this year, we have seen a huge reduction. In the case of reliability and validity of examinations, if you read the statement of Umalusi very carefully, we are saying that more and more subjects are having their results accepted as raw. By accepting exam result as raw, that means that the examinees and the moderators are getting it right, because there's a high degree of comparability between the standard of the examination this year and the standard of the examinations written in the previous year. The same holds true for the standard or the quality of markers, because if you do those comparisons, we see that the level of comparability it's very high. Yeah. So that is very encouraging. And Professor Vorming, in reading the statement, he did make mention of a figure of 66% of all of the 510 subjects. That is the figure of the subject that saw their results being accepted as raw. And if you look at the percentage of the proportion of the subject for which results were adjusted either upwards or downward, we can see that one going down. Because the more
Lepota,
you see the number or the proportions of question papers, exam papers, exam marks are being accepted as raw going up, that means the other types of adjustments are reducing. So that is a sign of a maturing system, as we said in our statement. And we encourage assessment bodies to do more to ensure that in the next cycle of standardization and approval of results, the number keeps going up.
Biki Lepota, of course, speaking to us on the part of Umalusi, and following that media briefing that was held earlier on today. The matric results are expected to be announced by the Basic Education Department Minister, that's Angie Motshekga, on Thursday.